Special thanks to Acting Secretary Sue and her team at the Department of Labor for visiting Birmingham. Welcome. We appreciate you. We appreciate your partnership, but we also appreciate the work you do standing for workers and for the people of Birmingham. My name is Sarah McMillan, and I have the pleasure of serving as Manager of Workforce and Talent Development within the Department of Innovation and Economic Opportunity within the city of Birmingham, which is a very long title, but basically just means I get to champion our workforce, I get to champion our people. The talent development really speaks for us because we really believe that our people are talented, they have what it takes to do the jobs of today and tomorrow, and they really are amazing and brilliant. In Birmingham, we put people first, and what this looks like is starting with a person in mind. A mother returning to the workforce after giving birth, a job seeker looking for a fresh start after experiencing the justice system, or a young person looking for passion and purpose beyond high school. What's their next step? I'm so proud of the work that we do, and I often think of my job as the best job in economic development because I get to center people. But if we're being honest, which I know this whole front row is really nervous that I'm going to be too honest because I am also the joke teller, but if we're being honest, this job is not my favorite job. And what my actual favorite job is that I get bossed around on a regular basis by a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So when you see me at work, people come in on Mondays and they're all like, oh, Monday, another Monday. And I'm like, Mondays? I've been getting torn apart at home by 2 small children who do nothing but demand, demand, demand. So the hours are long and the pay is great. And when my day ends, I'm just a mom, and I know I say just, and that's a big just, but I'm just a mom sitting in the carpool line looking at her perfectly ironed pantsuit, wondering if the stain on her leg is yogurt or snot. Just gotta ignore with it and tell yourself it's yogurt, even though you don't have yogurt in your fridge. I'm also just a mom that when the day ends, I drag my kids to the park, not for them, because play is important. Trust me, we all know play is important. But if you're not a parent, you do not understand how important parks are, because parks do this thing where they get your kids really energized and riled up, and then they go home and bedtime is smoother. And if you've ever done the bedtime routine where there's 20 tuck-ins and 14 requests for water, because has a child ever been more thirsty than before bedtime? Like, what's that about? You just don't understand how important parks are. So a couple months ago, I went to the park on a Friday afternoon. I picked my kids up and we went straight to the park. And I was just fighting for my life because I'm watching a 3-year-old navigate a playground that was clearly not designed by anyone who ever knew a 3-year-old little boy. And I locked eyes with a mom across the way, and there was something familiar about her. But this is like right after COVID, and you know people, but you don't really know them. And then it clicked that I had spent probably about 3 to 4 hours with this woman, interviewing her for an Embrace Mothers cohort that we were doing around storytelling. So we got to talking, and we really didn't talk about work or the fact that I knew probably way too much about her because I had interviewed her and I'd spent all this time with her. But we talked about motherhood, and we talked about, of course, no surprise to anyone here, we talked about childcare. She had just given birth to her 3rd. And her story is really interesting to me because she had just, before finding out she was pregnant, had just taken a job in the healthcare field. And she was really excited about it because it was an entry point for her to one day become a doctor. So she was excited because she just got her foot in the door. And unfortunately, because that job required her to be on her feet, she had to leave her job because of a complicated pregnancy. So we talked about that and talked about how she had just given birth to her 3rd child, and she was excited, and she was thinking about childcare, but she has 3 little ones, only one who's old enough to go to school. And so childcare was another reason why she just couldn't go back to the workforce. It didn't make sense for her, and sense that jingle, not the sense in your head. So I think about her a lot because I think about how that experience really grounded me as a mother and as a professional in this space. But I also think about my own story and how I have this wonderful job now. It's not a good job for me, it's a great job. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that before I pass the mic over. You're going to hear from a series of people today, and I think it's really relevant to note that this entire front row has done so much for me to make this job a good job. And not just because we have amazing benefits or a very clear trajectory on how you can grow and work within the city, but really those intangibles about dignity and care and being able to come to work as yourself, being able to be a mom at work. I'm going to start with you. Our mayor is a huge champion for our people. He's a champion for our parents, and he always, anything he thinks about doing for the city, he thinks about our workforce first. And so just, in the 4 years that I started with the city, we have now paid parental leave. So that's for birthing parents and non-birthing parents. I was the first city employee to use our beautiful lactation room, which as a new mother returning to work is a huge mental and physical thing for me able to have access to that room. And then on top of that, I also have a preferred seat at a child care facility that both of my children have gone to because of my role at the city. That's tremendous, and as a worker, that takes a lot of pressure off my shoulders so I can come to work and do the good work that I love to do. And then I have departmental leaders who, when I was literally like complicated pregnancy, just like the person that I told you before, at work, about to bust, Cornell looked at me and said, "Go home, take care of your baby, we got you." And then I think about Coriate, who doesn't flinch when he sees two little pigtails belonging to a 5-year-old hunched, hiding in the corner of my office because e-learning days never align with your schedule. That responsibility, that feeling, I don't feel like I'm doing it alone, and that's huge. And then what I think is really interesting is the person who I am going to invite to come up next, Josh Carpenter, hired me when I was 5 months pregnant. So like my friend I told you about earlier in the story, I had to make some difficult decisions. It was the middle of a pandemic. I was getting ready to lose my job because we were all losing our jobs, and I knew that was going to happen. And I just kind of got like this miraculous call for a job that I had applied for like literally 6 months ago. Interviewed, got the job, and I tell him on the phone, I'm like so nervous, my palms are sweating, and I'm worried because he's going to rescind this offer. Because who hires a pregnant woman who's 5 months pregnant, going to come work for you for a few months and then have to go have a baby? And his first response when I said I'm pregnant was, "Oh my God, congratulations, I just had a baby too, this is amazing." And again, just like everyone else, he said, "We'll figure it out." And so I just think that's a tremendous story, and I am really passionate about the work that I do, but I wanted to share that with you because I think it's really important that as we center good jobs for the people of Birmingham, that we also focus on the work that we do is really important, and we have a lot that we can do just in our individual space. So with that, I will pass it over to Josh.
Well, good morning. Sarah's a tough act to follow all the time, and that was just the tip of the iceberg on her humor. My name is Josh Carpenter, and I'm president and CEO of Southern Research, which is an 82-year-old translational research institute, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to first talk about a couple of people here who are leaders. First, I want to champion Mayor Woodfin. Mayor Woodfin recognizes that workers are people, and that jobs aren't just a source of income. It is a way to contribute to your community. It is a way to exercise your skills, and it is a sense of belonging. And I want to thank him for championing that locally, and Secretary Chu for championing that nationally. So Southern Research for 82 years has been moving science. We take concepts that are developed in a test tube, and we do all the steps between it, when that is developed in a lab to it enters the human body. We have about a $300 million economic impact in the city of Birmingham each year. And we say we move science not just from concept to clinic, but also because that work moves us. Through our storied history, we've developed 20 FDA-approved drugs, 7 cancer drugs, 50% of all chemotherapies in the United States were developed or tested at Southern Research. So what we do is consequential. My grandfather worked at U.S. Steel, and the year I was born, I think U.S. Steel had something like 30,000 employees here. Well, today they have about a handful. So Birmingham has been in a search of uncovering its new economic identity, and I'm here to tell you that I believe biotech and the conversion of healthcare assets in R&D into quality jobs is that new steel. If you just look at UAB, for example, UAB now has 34,000 employees. It is the state's largest employer. Today, and this past year, Birmingham was one of the top 5 cities in terms of new job creation, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and census data. The vast majority of those jobs were in healthcare and biotech. There are 5,000 people who work in the industry today, but there'll be 8,000 people who work in the industry by 2030. So we have to act, and we have to act while the industry is dynamic. Many of the jobs that are here today weren't here 5 years ago, and the same will be true 5 years from now. So we need to reimagine our education and workforce systems to make sure that they can be dynamic and they can support workers and working families. One misnomer, I believe, about biotech is that everybody has to have a PhD, and that's just not true. About 40% of all occupation codes in biotech in the region are sub-baccalaureate degrees, 2-year degrees or below, and about 50% of Southern Research workers have those degrees. So how are we at Southern Research meeting this challenge and working to build the opportunity infrastructure that Secretary Chu and others are pushing forward? The Mayor Woodfin said something earlier that really resonated with me. Recruiters are your employees are your best recruiters. They can also be the quickest way to turn workers away. A couple of years ago when we started, Southern Research had a voluntary attrition rate of about 20%, meaning that 1 in 5 workers were leaving per year. We quickly hired Brantley Fry, who's in the audience today, and who helped turn that around. We were already maxing out the education benefit, which is important, meaning that you could come in and continue to get as many dollars as possible to go get degrees that you needed to grow in your career. And in fact, one of our vice presidents came in with no degree and now has not 1 or 2, but 3 degrees that she earned while she was at Southern Research. But we knew we needed to do a couple of things, and all of those align with the good jobs principles that the Department of Labor has put together. First, we increased the wage floor to a living wage, making sure that every single person at Southern Research was making a living wage according to Birmingham's income. Second is we knew that we would need to add and expand parental leave. So we added parental leave, which was a huge opportunity for us to support young parents, as Sarah so eloquently talked about a second ago. And then we added expanded mental health benefits, which became particularly consequential as we lost several employees in tragic accidents throughout the last 6 to 8 months. That all resulted in a new voluntary attrition rate of 5%. If you think about that, it costs about 40% on average to hire someone. So we saved millions of dollars by lowering our voluntary attrition rate. And that wasn't just because we were good people. It's because it was sound strategy to recruiting and retaining great talent. And the second way we think about it at Southern Research is as a community partner. Firstly, we worked closely together with Sarah and Griate and Cornell and others on the Good Jobs Challenge grant, which I am so excited about because I get a vicarious joy thinking about the young people, the families that will benefit from the jobs and the training that the Department of Labor funds will provide for people here. And we have to do that, recognizing that we need to increase our labor force participation rate generally, but specifically with women and black people. In Alabama, we estimate that the black workforce participation rate is about 55%, and for women, it's 52%. Increasing that is consequential, not just for those families, but for the overall region's economic competitiveness. So we are a partner in the Good Jobs Challenge grant. We look forward to recruiting and training folks and co-designing curriculum so that we can make sure that they have quality jobs with us. We also worked with the foundation laid by that grant to apply for one of the Department of Labor peer agencies, the Department of Commerce's Regional Tech Hubs grants. So we were one of 31 finalists out of about 200 communities that applied, and it really builds upon the foundation of the work and the talent that we are training in healthcare and biotech. And we're not just working alone. We're working with several HBCUs in the area, including Miles, and then throughout the state in Tuskegee. We're also working with our 2-year college partners at Lawson State, at Jeff State. And we know that we have an opportunity to do something significant. I do want to say that this is not a partisan initiative. The state of Alabama has been incredibly generous toward this effort. This last legislative session, they created $5 million for a workforce center to be located very closely to Southern Research's campus, where it was actually sitting on a public housing site. So you can imagine that housing residents can literally cross the street and get the training they need to obtain a quality job in our industry. That is the type of effort, it's the type of intentionality that I believe we need to meet the opportunities in front of us. I'm excited about the future of good jobs in Birmingham, and I'm excited to be a partner because we have great leaders who are committed to making sure that working families in Birmingham have a strong future. Thank you.
To our mayor, our national guest, and all of our distinguished guests who are here today, good morning. There's an old song that we sing in the Pentecostal church that says, I feel better, so much better, since I laid my burdens down. And I can imagine that there are thousands of employed and unemployed, seeking employment people who resonate with those words. Every time they hear the total at the grocery store, I bet they wish they could lay those burdens down. Every time they receive the utility bill or the rent bill, they likely wish they could lay those burdens down. John Hope Bryant said in his new book, Financial Literacy for All, he talked about how a shift in our country's economy can take away people's ability to support their families. And he said this, for them, the economic ladder was broken. And the truth is that for many today, it still is. And for others, there was never a ladder. So one of the ways that we are helping to build new ladders and to lift those burdens is through our community-based organization, the Surge Project Incorporated, which I founded 8 years ago. We know that it takes many different efforts to fuel economic transformation for people who have been systemically, intentionally put at a disadvantage. So with the support of our mayor's office, aligned with the 8th principle of the Good Jobs Principles, we were able to stand up our Work Well program. Our program focuses on the skills and career advancement by offering a soft skills training and credentialing in the healthcare industry. And we know that supportive services are also necessary to get folks into those good jobs. So we include transportation aid and also access to mental health care at no cost to our constituents. With the initial investment through the BOLD grant, 80% of our participants completed the program receiving an industry-recognized license in the healthcare field. And of that 80%, 50% of those people were graduating high school seniors from Jackson Olin High School. One thing I'd like to point out is that about a month ago, I got a chance to go by the school. And while I was there, one of the students stopped me and she said, Miss T, I got something to tell you. She had a really big smile on her face. And I said, what's going on? She said, after going through your program and receiving my license as an EKG tech, I went back and got another certification. And I said, I'm so, so proud of you. That was a testimony that I wish my brother could have given, who was killed just a few blocks away from that school. There was another working mother and wife who went through the program who called me and said, I just want you to know we appreciate what you all were able to do. I now have a job working in the healthcare industry. She's able to now help support her family. This is not just professional work for me. This is heart and soul work for me. We're creating pathways that lead disadvantaged youth and young adults into successful careers. But what else do we want from this? In the words of John Hope Bryant, we want for every unexpected expense not to turn into a crisis. We want for people to experience stability without being stressed out. We want parents and caregivers to have time with their families and not have to work 2 and 3 jobs. We want for people to have access to resources, for people to be able to lay those expensive burdens down, for people in great cities to have access to good jobs. So for me, although I experienced tragedy here, what I believe is that tragedy does not define us and crime rates won't bind us. So I say thank you to our national and city leaders for keeping this as a priority. And we look forward to seeing the new and wonderful opportunities these investments that are coming in will create here in the Magic City and abroad. Thank you. Following me is our Deputy Director of Economic Development, Coriate Hauser.
I feel like we should just defer. Just Sarah. I mean, it's been good. What a privilege it is to be in Birmingham and to work with so many incredible people, incredible leaders, incredible community partners, which is why I think we call ourselves the Magic City. There's a true definition, but when we talk about the Magic City today, it's people like this that really make magic in the Magic City. So if it's your first time to Birmingham, we have some national guests, welcome to the Magic City, and hopefully you're starting to see why we call ourselves a Magic City, because of our people. As T said, thank you so much for sharing with us what the Surge Project has done for our community. So we thank you for that. I am Coriate Hauser, and I proudly serve as the Deputy Director for the Department of Innovation and Economic Opportunity at the City of Birmingham. I just want to talk just briefly about our department and some of the things that we have going on that really align us to these good job principles as well. So good jobs are the bread and butter of our department. Our mission is to make Birmingham the model of an inclusive and resilient economy here in Birmingham for all of our residents to have tools and resources they need to build a successful life here in Birmingham. And so it is a true honor today to host you today, Acting Secretary Sue, the entire Department of Labor that is here. We are honored to have you here on the ground here in Birmingham. It is a unique vantage point for us, both as an employer and as a part of the Birmingham workforce ecosystem, collaborating with all of our partners in this work. In the community, as T has said, she's one of 50 of our bold grantees that has served over 7,000 residents in our city. So I think we can give her a hand clap for that. And that service is not just in, TA support, but it's in placement of jobs, which is what we're here to talk about, good jobs and getting people to those. So we have a lot of investment that's happening in Birmingham, and particularly, as Josh mentioned, Good Jobs Challenge. We're placing over 1,000 workers in the healthcare field, with 90% of them coming from undervalued communities. And you may say, why did I say undervalued? Because someone decided that there's a set of population that is not valued. So it's not just under-resourced, it's undervalued. And so we want to make sure that we push them to the front and get them in high-paying, high-growth jobs. On the other side of that, we're standing in a room today, in a facility today, North Birmingham Library, which is central to another federal application that we have now, that you guys see it as this now, but it will turn into, hopefully, a workforce training center that allows people, again, to get good jobs. As you came onto this campus, you see that it's walkable. So we wanted to make sure that there was a central place that people could have access to workforce training and opportunities. And so this, hopefully in a year, looks a lot different than what we're sitting in right now. I'll defer a lot of my time over to our wonderful leader, but before I do that, I do want to recognize Cornell Wesley, who is our Director of Innovation and Economic Opportunity. So if you wave your hand, we have most of our team here. I see them in the back. Department of Innovation, Economic Opportunity, wave your hands. We have all kind of sorts of folk here with us today. So with that, I will turn it over to our fearless leader, Mayor Randall L. Woodfin.
I see we have a house full. All of these are very tough acts to follow, by the way. Sarah, that was amazing. A lot of that I did not know, so very grateful for you being open with us and sharing your personal story and journey. And T, as always, thank you. And Coriate, thank you as well. And Josh, thank you. I will say, in listening to each of you, I think a good employer focuses on hiring and retention. But I think a great employer is very intentional about the morale of their employees. And if it's low, you do what's necessary to get it up. And if it's high, you do what's necessary to keep it up. I think a great employer is very intentional about creating an atmosphere where employees feel safe, and they feel that they have the safe space open enough to share ideas and issues and concerns. I also believe that a great employer creates a space where the policies and decisions they make with their employees. And they do that by creating a feedback loop, being intentional about gathering information. And so, do I believe it's hard to be a great employer? No. I do believe it requires intentionality. And you do what's necessary to take care of your employees. And in the state where there is a conversation always about employees' rights, we miss the mark a lot. And so I'm glad at a local level we are intentional about what does it take to be a model employer. Well, the answer is simple. You do what's necessary to take care of your employees. With that said, I am honored to stand in solidarity with the Biden-Harris administration, but in service to our communities. And I do want to pause and acknowledge where we are. We are one of the most important spaces in any community that is a public library. So I do want to take the time to thank Janine Langston, who is the executive director of our library system. I want to thank the regional manager, Loretta Jones. And I also want to give a special shout out to the branch manager and all the employees here for hosting us here at the North Birmingham Library, which is led by Carnisha Payne. But the other partners in the room, because of you, I want to thank you for joining us today as we talk about what prosperity looks like. You can't have a conversation about prosperity without talking about your employees. And you can't have a conversation about workforce without talking about your residents. And so we stand in service to our communities that have been underserved for generations, unfortunately, not just here, but in a lot of pockets in America. For those businesses still reeling from the effects of a global pandemic, which we are at 4 years in a few months. For those justice impacted persons who have paid their debt and simply looking to provide for their family, like an employee I heard last night who just literally wants to be gainfully employed. But my favorite word, hope. Those in community who are still in search of hope. Today we work together to bring them light, and that is what I'm most grateful for. But it's also why I want to take a special moment and time to thank Secretary Sue. The Biden-Harris administration gets a lot of things right. One of the things they've gotten right is leadership in their cabinet positions. And they don't just have people in these leadership positions for their technical skills and their expertise, but people with genuine heart and passion. People who get out of the bubble of D.C. and come on the ground to cities like Birmingham and see what we're doing to give us hope, to provide solutions, but also to listen to us. Secretary Sue, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for being here in Birmingham. It means a lot. Birmingham is a very, very, very prideful city. And we are proud to be a model city for good jobs. And so here's just a sample of how we're working to improve the lives of employees. You've already heard some of that from Sarah. You've heard a lot of that from Coriate, but I just want to add a little bit. Last year, the city of Birmingham announced its new, actually almost 2 years ago now, its new parental 12-week leave policy. You've also heard about the lactation room. In addition to that, our Department of Public Works, which is led by Josh Yates, who's in the audience, we raised their wages, and we also, a partner in the room, formed with Lawson State as it relates to training for CDLs. And our Department of Innovation and Economic Opportunity, which is led by Cornell Wesley, the creative and innovative things they do for not just our employees, but workforce in our community is so vital and important. But I do want to talk about the intentionality around second chances. Our Partners for Progress initiative has literally removed employment barriers for over 15,000 people because it was the morally imperative right thing to do. And then our $25 million plan to reinvest in Birmingham aims to provide funding for this footprinted area. And so let me just finish by saying this. When you are an employer, you have to wake up every single day and think about what's in the best interest of the people you serve. And it turns out, in my space, it's not just the citizens of Birmingham, but it's the 3,000 plus employees I have. What are we doing as an employer to make sure they have the necessary tools, safe space, morale, benefits, wages, and everything else they need to give what they need to serve the citizens of Birmingham? I think with that in mind and being intentional about that gives me the energy and fuel I need and a leadership team that is surrounded by us every day to do what's necessary for our employees. There are many employers in this room. There are many union leaders in this room, and I do want to point you out, acknowledge you, and thank you for what you do in fighting for workers' rights. City of Birmingham stands alongside you and with you. We got your back and your front. Please continue to fight. We know it is not easy, but that's why it's called a fight. But we join our employers in this room. We join union leaders in this room. We join everyone in this room that is intentional about doing what's necessary to take care of employees. But we also have a job to do in taking care of the future workforce. Because 4 out of 10 able adults in this community, unfortunately, are on the sidelines and not working, which tells me we still have much more work to do. But it is great to do that work with the Biden-Harris administration. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here today. And I am not introducing the secretary. Somebody way cooler is going to do that. Thank you all so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Olivia Woodson, and I am a Birmingham resident, born and raised. I'm also a journeyman wireman of Local Union 136. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Acting Secretary Julie Sue.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Olivia, thanks to you. I know we had a little bit of a chance to talk beforehand, and you said that you were nervous. And I just want to say that you and people like you make me want to do what I get to do every single day. So it has been my honor to be able to share space with you here today. Thank you very, very much for that. And thank you for what you do. So before I begin, I wanted to, of course, thank all the amazing leaders in this room, but I also wanted to acknowledge one who is not here, and that is the Reverend James Lawson. His philosophy and leadership for nonviolence in the face of racism really shaped the civil rights movement, and including his leadership in the Children's March here in Birmingham 60 years ago. He was a champion of fair pay and good jobs, and he taught new generations throughout his life that you can't have economic justice without racial justice, and you can't have racial justice without economic justice. And even as we mourn his passing just 2 days ago, I was so looking forward to telling him about my trip here. But we gather here also to carry on his really, really significant work. And so I like to imagine that he is cheering us all on as we move forward. So as has been said already by everybody who's spoken, good jobs change lives. They bring dignity and respect. They bring security. They sustain families. As President Biden likes to say, they're about looking your children in the eye and saying everything's going to be okay and meaning it. Good jobs are not just transformational for the individuals who have them and for their children and their families, but they uplift entire communities. And they instill, using Mayor Woodfin's word, hope. So that's why today's Good Jobs principles are so important and why the Good Jobs Alliance that we are building across the country matters so much. And the work of everybody in this room to breathe life into these words is so critical. So I want to acknowledge Sarah for your incredible story. I'm a mother also. I'm in a different point in the adventure. My children are now grown. I still wonder why they have so much energy right before bedtime. But I also wonder why they don't put their things away. So I don't know what I didn't do right when my kids were your age. But it continues to shape who you are, as you know, throughout your life. And having a good job is also about making sure that mothers can do their jobs and they're both supported at home and at work. So thank you for bringing that home so powerfully. Yeah. To Coriate, it's been amazing to meet you and to see all the work that you are doing here in the city. And you make it very easy for my team to want to be working with you hand in hand as we move forward to make sure that all of this stuff is real. And thank you for being our partner in so many ways. Thank you. And to Mayor Woodfin, your steadfast, courageous, and grounded leadership. Every time I get to see it, I'm amazed by it. You should know that you have many, many fans, both at the Department of Labor and in the Biden-Harris administration. We saw each other in Atlanta, I think, for the African American Mayors Association conference. I saw you in Washington, D.C. earlier this week. I know I'm doing my job right if I'm in the same space with you, but it's especially a joy to come here to Birmingham and to be with you here. So thank you. And of course, I want to really thank Josh Carpenter from Southern Research and T, can I call you T also? T. Ellis of the Surge Project for the conversations that we've had, but also the foundation that you have helped to create here in Birmingham for the work ahead. And there are so many community partners in the room. I'm not going to be able to name them all, but I did want to thank the union leaders for showing up here and every single day, to Jobs to Move America and Alabama Arise, who have helped make this trip so rich and meaningful for me. You are all truly incredible. So the Department of Labor is really committed to this city. We have created a new OSHA region that is headquartered right here in Birmingham. We are delivering grants along with the AFL-CIO to make sure that women and women of color and people of color get the good jobs that are being created. We are listening to what workers are saying and what employers are saying to make sure that all of our work is grounded in the reality of folks in the community. And I am here because Alabama matters. I'm here because Birmingham matters. It matters to me, it matters to this president, and it matters to this country. Your iron and steel are the backbone of this country. Your medical researchers, as has already been shared, like those at Southern Research, helped find treatment during the pandemic, as well as a whole host of other things that have literally saved lives. And of course, your contributions to the civil rights movement have really shaped the trajectory of our country. So just yesterday, I was in Anniston at New Flyer with New Flyer workers, talking about how we can support these workers who are meeting the growing demand for transit buses in a workplace that is now unionized with its first contract, where the workers have secured improved wages, improved benefits, parental leave, and enhanced retirement benefits. And we know that those kinds of jobs can be the jobs and must be the jobs of the future if we do our work together and if we do it right. That's right. So to understand the moment that we are in, I just want to take a second to remind us of where we were just 3 years ago, a little more than 3 years ago. So right before President Biden came to office, COVID was raging. There was no national strategy to address it. Unemployment was very, very high. And when people went to the store, they didn't know if they were going to find toilet paper when they needed it. Compare that to where we are today. Since President Biden has been in office, there have been 15.6 million jobs created in this country. In fact, that's more jobs created under President Biden than under any other president in the same amount of time. And at the same time, the unemployment rate remains historically low. In fact, historically low for the longest stretch since the 1960s. And none of this happens by accident. In fact, most people predicted it would not be possible, the job growth as well as the low level of unemployment. But leadership matters, and we know that it matters because you see it here in Birmingham. And so President Biden is making sure that we build an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, which requires us to be clear-eyed about who has been pushed to the bottom for far too long, who has, in Corriate's words, been undervalued for too long. So I also want us to remember that before President Biden came to office, we all were promised an infrastructure week that never materialized. It became a punchline. Not anymore. Under President Biden's Investing in America agenda, we are creating not just an infrastructure week, but an infrastructure decade. So what does that look like? Well, here in Alabama, it means almost $7 billion of investments in safe roads and bridges, in a modernized airport, in public transit. It means clean water. It means clean air. It means high-speed, reliable internet in every single community, and much more. And I say this often, but these things should not be luxuries. They are the foundation of strong communities. And the president is investing in making sure that they reach every single community, including $21 million for Birmingham's transportation system as part of that Investing in America agenda. Thank you. Today's announcement and the partnership of those in this room are going to help make sure that every single cent of that money supports good jobs here in the Magic City. So with our $1 billion of investments, the Biden-Harris administration is creating a moment to build not just our physical infrastructure, but an infrastructure that supports real opportunity for everybody. And today, Birmingham is seizing on that by adopting the Good Jobs Principles. A commitment to the Department of Labor's Good Jobs Principles means, already been said, that we are being intentional about connecting all of Alabama's residents and all of Birmingham's workers to good jobs. Because Alabama's workers should not have to settle. Because no one should have to work full-time, year-round, and still live in poverty. No one should have to work 2 or 3 jobs and still barely be able to put together a life. That is not the American promise. That is not the American dream. That should not be what happens for people in this city or in this state. Good jobs, as has already been said, means a job with security, a job where you know that you can not just get by, but get ahead, where you have leave and benefits, so if you or your children need to go to the doctor, you can, where you have a retirement plan so that you know that at the end of a career, you can retire with dignity, where you know that you are going to come home healthy and safe at the end of the workday, and where you know that the wages that you have earned are not just enough for you to live on, but also that you're going to get paid those wages at the end of each workday. And a good job is a job where workers can exercise their rights and their power, and where they have the right to choose whether they want to be in a union. That is a right that belongs to workers, full stop. No one else, without interference, without retaliation, and without fear. And the Biden-Harris administration stands with all workers who are organizing in their workplaces. So those are the kinds of jobs that we are creating and we want to make sure we create. And we're also being intentional about who gets those jobs. The Good Jobs Principles include recruiting from those undervalued communities. It means breaking down systemic barriers. It means focusing on justice-impacted individuals, on single moms, on those who struggle to find housing, It means creating a connectivity between our K through 12 system, our community colleges, our four-year colleges, and our entire educational ecosystem. And I call all of these things, the employers who are creating jobs, the unions who are helping to make sure those are good jobs, the organizations that serve communities who have been left behind and left out for too long, and all of the people in this room, along with local leadership, I call all of these our opportunity infrastructure that we need to create in every community across this country. These roads and bridges are as important as our physical roads and bridges. And we know that when we unite the folks in this room, workers and businesses, with real vision, with community-based organizations, with labor unions, civil rights organizations, educational institutions, philanthropy, that we can make the opportunity infrastructure that this country needs and deserves. And we have a moment right now under President Biden's leadership, and with those of us here today, to make sure that they do right by all workers. I want to say one thing about racial justice, because I really believe, as the president does, and you'll hear him talk about this all the time, it was no accident that on day one of his presidency, he issued an executive order that challenged all of us to make racial equity real across this country. And I know that if we get this right, we can seize this moment for communities, for families, and also to advance racial justice, because we do know that ending structural racism is also good economic policy. So today we're laying the foundation for that future. And we cannot go back to where we were, because the future that we are building, the future that everybody's talking about, holds much too much promise. It holds too much real hope, and it is real opportunity for all communities. And so the Department of Labor is putting our hearts, our talent, our people, our investments into this work. And we know it is a fight, and we want you to know that we are in this fight with you. And we've got a lot more fight in us, as I know you do too. So let me just close by saying the promise of a good job for all, let's make that promise real right here in Birmingham, right here for all of its people, and let's fulfill that promise together. And we have more bridges to build. The bridge from poverty to prosperity, the bridge from racial exclusion to real equity. So let's roll up our sleeves and let's build together. Thank you all so very much for all that you are doing here.